President Trump's personal battle with COVID-19, along with a couple dozen lawmakers and top White House staff now facing the virus firsthand, has created a wave of uncertainty as the health crisis circles the nation's capital. The last few days adding to mounting pressure on Congress to sort out a stimulus deal that will reach Americans right here in the Midwest and fill the seat left open by late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Joining us now from D.C. is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Senator, thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Glad to be with you.
How often, Senator, are you in contact with the president, and what concerns do you have when it comes to the situation?
Just talked to him right before you and I sat down for this interview, and it was all business. He seemed perfectly normal and back at work. Obviously, he's still in the recovery and treatment period, but I don't think it's impairing his ability to do the job. And we were discussing a number of current issues, and I think he's going to be just fine.
That's good to hear. How often are you, Senator, being tested, and has your staff made any changes in protocol since Friday?
No, we've been operating consistent with the CDC guidelines and the recommendation of our physician since May. And the only members that I've had who ended up in quarantine actually contracted the virus somewhere else. So we've been able to operate very safely. And even when, somebody gets sick, it's sort of like the fire department. You don't quit having a fire department because somebody, has a sickness. You continue, and when they get sick, they come back. And so I don't think the coronavirus is going to in any way impact the Senate's ability to do its work. And we have a big job to do with the confirmation of a new Supreme Court justice.
What is a new timeline for seeing another round of relief reach Americans?
Yeah, we've been kind of going back and forth now for a couple of months. The bipartisan spirit we had back in the spring when we passed the CARES Act, which led to it passing without a single dissenting vote, seems to have dissipated as we've gotten closer and closer to the election. The House Democrats under Speaker Pelosi have been passing a couple of times just massive bills with a lot of things that are irrelevant, in my view, to the coronavirus challenge. For example, free health care for illegal immigrants or tax cuts for rich people in New York and California. We've been saying, let's have a bipartisan package, but let's make it related to the coronavirus. And so what we think ought to be in there is more help for kids, education, K through 12, and college, university, replenishing the PPP loan program, hugely successful in Kentucky. Over 50,000 Kentucky businesses accessed over $5 billion in loans. And we need more for health care. Davis County, for example, under the CARES Act already has received $37 million, much of that for healthcare providers. I'd like to see another package, but it needs to be directly related to the challenge we have. And we've had a hard time reaching an agreement, and I'm not sure we're going to get there, certainly prior to the election, but we'll be in session after the election as well, and hopefully we can finally reach an agreement.
And Senator, you mentioned some of those things that have been your top priority, but as we are seeing here in the tri-state, our numbers are growing at an alarming rate with new record high cases reported nearly every day. Is there anything else that you would add to that list as you see an escalation of cases this fall?
Yeah, I think it bears repeating, and I've said over and over and over again to you and others, we need to be wearing our masks and practicing social distancing. The coronavirus clearly is not going away on its own. We've seen that with even the President of the United States getting infected. It will not be put in the rearview mirror until we get a vaccine. And the earliest anybody predicts we could have a vaccine would be late this year or early next year. And even once we get one or more vaccines that work, it requires an enormous number of doses for not only people in our country, but around the world. So we all need to participate in trying to prevent the spread. You're right. We have more cases now than we had even back in the spring in our state, in Kentucky. So it's still at an alarming rate. Everybody should be wearing a mask and practicing social distancing, protecting everybody else, and getting through this until we get a vaccine.
Senator, you told me in previous conversations that the U.S. would not see another shutdown, but we've spoken with business owners in Kentucky just recently who are still scared that another closure is just around the corner. What do you say to them?
No, I don't think so. Dr. Fauci has indicated another shutdown is not in order. What we learned during the shutdown is it produces a whole other set of problems. Delayed health care, suicides up, spouse abuse up, child abuse up. We're not going to shut down the economy again, which brings me back to the mask wearing and the social distancing. How do we get through this period? That's the way to do it, because that helps contain the spread. But no, shutting down the economy again is not on anybody's agenda and would not work and did not work, in my opinion, when we did it before.
Moving on, Senator, the other big focus for the Senate right now is that confirmation that you mentioned for Amy Coney Barrett to fill that Supreme Court seat. How do you plan to move the process along as scheduled to start next Monday, despite the latest roadblocks? Is virtual a real possibility, and is it imperative to see that process completed before November 3rd?
Well, it's imperative to move forward with the process. We have a great nominee. The president's picked the single best person in the country to succeed the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This is a woman of extraordinary accomplishment. First, look at her family. 7 kids, 2 adopted, 1 with special needs. She and her lawyer husband have to be the best organized people imaginable to deal with all of that and their 2 careers as well. She was a professor at Notre Dame Law School. When she was a student there, her dean said she was the single best student he ever had in all the years he was dean. She clerked on the U.S. Supreme Court with Justice Scalia. She's a terrific nominee with a great life story. I think the American people are going to see that on full display when the hearings begin in Judiciary Committee next week.
And Senator, how do Americans expect to see that process play out, especially with the couple of positives you've had on that committee?
Well, we've done a lot of hearings going back to May. Sometimes we've had witnesses remote. Sometimes we've had some senators remote. We kind of have these hybrid hearings that we've been doing quite routinely since May. And the Judiciary Committee will be able to have the hearings safely, and whatever members don't want to be there in person can do it, can basically call it in with Zoom equipment.
Senator McConnell, anything else you would like to add today?
No, I think you covered it. Thanks a lot.